Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
You know, I think I talked with Elias about that. Basically, what you guys did, it's like, you know, it's history already in a sense that we don't perceive it as history, because something that happened in 91, let's say, that's basically 30 years ago. So if, you know, if you would think in 1985, what happened 30 years ago, that was Elvis Presley, I guess, you know, so it's
right.
For me, it's important to get, I don't know, all you guys to talk about your stuff, because I think it's important what you guys do. So
yeah, that's good, man.
But I want to ask you first this, like, you know, I followed your Bandcamp, which is great that we have this now, and you've been extremely active in the last half a year since the lockdown, which, including me, I consider this lockdown quite, in a way, a productive period, despite there were no gigs. But I wanted to ask you, like, specifically about two records you did, and one is first the Sacred Vowels. The solo stuff, and I've read you basically recorded in the bedroom, and that you always wanted to do a solo record. So I wanted to ask you, how did this come about?
Well, when the lockdown happened, I guess in the middle of March for us, you know, I just gotten back from a tour, and you know, I don't tour as much as some people, but you know, I go out a few months out of the year, and my life's pretty hectic just with gigs and stuff. And, you know, I never really have a big block of time where I'm not either working on something or booking some stupid tour, or, you know, thinking about something that takes up my time. And when it first happened, you know, my wife was working at home and I was working with this big table, and before we really understood what was going on, we just kind of would sit there at the table. I got this burst of energy, knowing that I didn't have anything like a deadline or something, music to practice. I decided I was just going to write. I was just going to write melodies. And instead of using the keyboard or doing what I usually do, I decided to write on the saxophone and just write single line melodies. And so I had my big pad, and, you know, I write by hand. So I sat there and wrote music continuously every day, just these little melodies and stuff. And I didn't overthink it. I didn't try to fine tune them or anything like I usually do. My first impressions, and then I would move on to another one. And then my version of practicing was to internalize these melodies and usually try to memorize them and then move on, you know. And I kind of did that at least for 5 weeks straight, just every day, kind of doing that. And it was, you know, having my wife there, she was working and she didn't take too many breaks. So I guess normally if she's at work, you know, in the city, you know, obviously when you practice 3 hours, it means you spent 10 hours, you know. There's a lot of wasted time, a lot of just pacing and talking on the phone, you know, just doing a lot of bullshit. And so I kind of had eliminated that because I was with somebody else, you know, and so we would kind of take breaks at the same time. And I just got a lot done. And also I was playing, basically my practicing was playing these melodies. And then I got into playing etudes again, which I hadn't done in years, because I'd been talking to Branford Marsalis quite a bit on the phone, and he really works hard on classical music. And so we were just talking about etude, you know, what the benefits of that were. And it kind of inspired me to go backwards and get back into that kind of thing, which I did quite a bit when I first started playing. And so he sent me these books after we had this conversation. These books arrived, like Telemon flute pieces and all kinds of stuff. And so I just started working on those as well. And I was just kind of playing a lot, and almost 99.9% of what I was doing was melody based practicing and improvising. And so, you know, I was kind of working on paraphrasing these little melodies and sort of approaching it like one would if they were playing a song, you know, and not trying to do too much with it. And so in the back of my mind, you know, probably because of the pandemic, but, you know, I was thinking, maybe I'll start a new label, which doesn't mean anything. It just means a name. You know, I was talking to Taborn quite a bit, and I said, why don't we make solo records and put them out on Bandcamp? I bet you, you know, I bet you we could do okay. And it would give us something to look forward to. And so we both did that. He was recording on his iPad, but he knows what he's doing, you know, a lot. And then I just through my iPhone, I went up to the 3rd floor in our house and this little guest room area. And I threw my phone on the bed, literally threw it on the bed, landed on a pillow, hit record, and then started, you know, I think I said to my wife, I'm going to go upstairs and make a solo record. And she's kind of, okay, what time do you want to have lunch? You know, she didn't really, probably didn't even notice, but I went up there and I started playing these songs that I was working on. I think I played 3 or 4 of them. And I was kind of on a roll. It felt good. I didn't listen back to anything. I just decided to just do one take. Yeah. And then I thought, well, I better check this out with Taborn and see if the quality's good enough for him to master and make it sound good. So I sent him a bunch of them and I kind of pushed him a little bit to listen quickly. So I said, look, I'm working fast here. Let me know if if I need to do anything different. So he responded and he said, yeah, try going a little closer to the phone and maybe aiming at a different wall or something. So I experimented, you know, I started playing into where the stairs was. It was like a little reverb unit almost. So I moved around a little bit, but I didn't do much. And I think it took me about 3 days. I recorded about 12 songs. And then I worked up the courage to listen to them, probably had a few drinks, put the headphones on and managed to get through it and kind of enjoy it, which was a big deal for me because you know, normally I can't listen to a solo thing, you know, it's torture. And I was listening, you know, I wasn't really listening for the sound. I was just listening for the music and it kind of made sense. And it was this new approach or different approach was a little fresh for me. So it was easier to listen because I wasn't doing what I usually do, you know, and I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it. And then I sent it to David. He's kind of my ears. And I said, what do you think? This is, you know, you think this is boring or is this cool? And he said it was cool. And then he just started mastering it.
Oh.
And then I got it back and it sounded good enough for me.
Yeah.
And then he did his. And then I have this app on my phone where I can design posters and do stuff. It takes about 2 minutes. You just upload a photo and then you do all this crazy shit to it. And so I decided to make the covers myself. You know, I just didn't want to spend any money. And I thought it would be cool for the whole thing to be, you know, self-contained. And so I made covers for both of us. And then Steve Byram made me a logo. You know, I called it 9 Donkeys. And so he made me a little logo. And within a week, they were up, you know, or maybe 2 weeks. And it was up on Bandcamp. And I don't know if it was a Bandcamp day. It might have been when I released it. And then it went nuts. I was like, wow, this is working. You know, people were into it, the novelty, I guess. And so it motivated me to keep doing it, you know, and I started digging up live recordings.
Yeah, I saw that.
All these people were sending me, you know, I used to record a lot of gigs back in early 2000, late 90s. Yeah. And I sort of forgot about them. And this guy who engineered a lot of them wrote me at the same time and said, you know, I'm cleaning out my hard drives. Do you want me to send you this stuff? And he sent it to me. And then I was frantically sending them to David and listening to this stuff. You know, I would get up at like 5 a.m, listen for 2 hours to see if something's good enough. Then I'd send it to him and he would check it out. And he'd say, yeah, I can make this sound good. And a lot of them sounded really good. And then some of them were a little more like documentaries or something, but it got to be fun, you know. And lately I dug up a whole bunch of stuff because I went over to my old studio and I found about 150 DAT recordings.
Wow.
Which I started listening to. So I've got, for next year, I've got so much shit.
So you will put that out like live
yeah,
gigs?
Yeah.
Wow, super. Yeah.
So it's kind of nice. And then a new thing kind of happened. This guitar player, while I was doing this, you know, the whole social media thing's interesting because as much as everybody complains about it, I've learned a lot. I've gotten turned on to a lot of stuff. And one of the things I got turned on to was after I did my solo record, this guitar player who I didn't know started posting videos of him playing along with the solo stuff that he had transcribed and playing from memory, and it sounded really good. And so I got in touch with him. I said, man, these are great. You should keep doing it. And he kept doing it. And then gradually we started talking and he transcribed all the solo records.
Oh, wow.
Like the whole thing, which he hadn't written out. And then he wrote it out. And then I said, why don't you record my, you know, do a solo record of my music? You know, you seem pretty determined.
What's his name?
Greg Belial Chi. That's his name.
I have to check it out, definitely. Well, cool.
But he, so anyway, you know, I said, why don't you do it? I'll send you a bunch of music and then you decide what you want to record. And I said, and you don't have to do straightforward, you know, you have to play the head and solo. You can do whatever you want with it. Kind of like what Mitchell did when we did the piano thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, first he tried to be a little too respectful. And then I said, no, man, do your thing, rip it apart. You know, don't play heads. I don't want to hear heads, you know.
Yeah. I
know you can play this stuff, but, you know, do something different. And so he just finished it. I mean, and there's acoustic guitar and it sounds fucking amazing. This guy, and I never would have met him if it wasn't for, you know, Instagram, which is silly.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff like that keeps happening. And so I'm hesitant to kind of say that it's a waste of time, you know, even though the internet is kind of a drag. There are, you know, if you do it right, I think it can lead to some, you know, surprises. And that was a huge surprise. You know, like David got involved. He's helping him record it. And, and anyway, so it turned into this thing that never would have happened. You know?
Well, so definitely things are easier now, right? If you...
Well, I don't know about easier, but I'm home, you know, so I have time.
Yeah.
And if I could learn how to sleep, that would be nice. But I do get a lot done when I wake up. So
no, in a sense, easier. Like you know, like that. It nowadays, it's not. It doesn't have to be an album in a way. You know, like and still some people do it, but like you know, when it's an album, it's like this huge deal. Like it's a special thing. But I think you never did it, even in the '90s. Like you know, with the paraphrase and all the live recordings with the Speed and the quartet. It was just like live gigs basically, and that's really cool. I think you changed the whole vibe there for me. But now it's easier. You can just put it on Bandcamp and fans will buy it because they want the music, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love doing physical copies, and I'm going to do that next year more. But you know, there's only so much time you have to do it, and money, and the shipping and all that. And also everybody says, "Oh man, I want vinyl." And then you do vinyl and no one buys it. And then they go, "Oh man, you should make CDs." And you do that and they don't buy it. You know, so it's a tricky game. And I have no idea. I used to be able to guess what would happen. Now I have no idea. I mean, I'm amazed that anybody pays for anything, you know, because these records, you can find them you know, they end up on, even my records on Intakt are on YouTube. You know, the distributor puts them on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, it's insane. I mean, so you kind of have to, you know, trust. I think if you make the packages interesting, then you have a chance, you know, but if people don't care about that, then you're screwed, you know? Then it's just, they might buy it out of guilt. You know?
No, it's quite fucked up regarding, I mean, like, I think only gigs are the only chance to, I guess, sell physical copies. That's how I see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now there's not enough gigs, so now it's really it's interesting. But anyway, I try not to complain.
No, well, I wanted to ask you also about this other one you did. I spoke about it with Mark already, Elias, Blood from a Stone. So this was basically done then in the same manner, or
we went.
Told me something.
It was pretty funny. I mean, me and my wife went out to his house. He and his wife, we hung out with him, stayed in a tent outside in his yard. It was totally crazy. And I thought I wasn't going to bring my horn because I don't know. I just wasn't sure. And then for some reason, I have this other horn that I never play. I decided to bring that horn and then a mouthpiece that I never play. I don't know why. Oh. And then I just thought, well, we're not going to do anything, but I might noodle a little bit. And so, of course, 5 seconds after I get there, Mark's like, let's make a record, man. And Elias is insane. So he's like, come on, man, let's make a record. And so I think it was the day we got there, we went up in his bedroom, and Mark's like the Rudy Van Gelder of the bass. He's got all this shit. Yeah. He's the opposite of me. He knows how to do it. He has mics. And so we went in his little bedroom, and of course I was panicking because I felt like I could barely play this horn. And so I was trying to warm up, all of a sudden I was really nervous. And, but anyway, we did it. And then the next day, then he was like, okay, man, the next morning he said, we got 40 minutes, man. We need another 20 minutes, so went back up there and recorded some more. Wow. And the night before, the night after, the night that we slept over, we went out, we had this big cookout outside. It was kind of cold, but we hung out outside and we were drinking and we were listening to music on these speakers. We're listening to all this really cool music. It was really fun. And anyway, and then the next morning, after no sleep, it's like, hey man, come on, we got to finish the record, and he was all excited, and so anyway, that's how that came about.
But it sounds great. I mean, because
did you
guys ever play duo like before, or
we did a bunch of tours in '91 and 1990. We did European tours, 2 of them.
Oh wow! I didn't know.
And I don't think we made a record, but we did 2 really good tours. Wow. Like gigs every night, and then I played in his band for a couple of years.
Yeah,
I think I made a few records with him, and
you basically the first records with him were like one of the first records you as a sideman, right? Like Split Image. And
I think so. Yeah, it was his first record. Yep.
And the current set, right? I think.
Yeah, that one, and then I don't know if that's probably it. There might have been one more.
Split Image with Dewey, where we play.
There was that, and then there was a third one.
Oh.
I can't remember what it was called. It had this tune called Third World on it. That might have been the name of the record.
Oh, okay. But how did you meet Mark, by the way? I wanted to ask you that because I guess you guys go way back, or?
Yeah, I mean, oh boy, I don't even know if I know how I met him. I mean, that first record was 1984 or 5.
4 or 5, yeah. I think Split Image.
I don't know how I met him. I mean, I knew Ray Anderson because he had played in a couple of groups of mine in the early 80s. I don't know how I met Elias. That's a good question.
Oh.
Probably in a bar somewhere. I mean, we probably went somewhere and hit it off and, had drinks, talked, and then,
But he was already playing, right? Before.
Yeah, he was a pro. I was kind of barely anything, So I was probably afraid to even think about playing with him. And then, I don't know. I think I gave him this weird kind of pep talk in the 80s. I said, man, you should make your own records, because I said, you've been playing all these records. You could do all this shit. Just go in and do it. And then I hooked him up with this engineer who gave us free studio time. And then there was no excuse, But it was fun.
That's a great one with Dewey. I mean, that's such a cool record.
Yeah. There's a story about that too.
Dewey.
I was so nervous I could barely hold the horn.
Really?
Yeah, totally. I couldn't believe it.
But was he cool?
Totally cool.
Player? Yeah.
I think he came from a art opening. He'd been drinking wine. He was like, "Oh man," he acted like he could barely play, and then all of a sudden, took these 2 incredible solos. He was done in about 20 minutes.
Wow, he was such a
that was incredible.
Yeah, but speaking of like this early 80s, late 70s, I really wanted to ask you this, which was like, you know, you seem to be like this.
Hey, man, can we pause it for 1 second?
Sure, no worries.
Okay, hold on. I got to get...
Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
No worries. No, I just wanted to ask you, like, you know, you've been doing, you started a new label nowadays, but you did Screwgun before, and you did then the Empire thing already, like the late 70s, which was like,
Yeah,
I think real novelty, because not many people actually did it. And I just wanted to ask you, how did you back then, even without having a record out or anything, like decided to do that, like start Empire?
I stole the idea from my teacher, from Julius Hemphill. He had his own label.
He did?
And
I didn't know that. Wow,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. His first two records. And when I met him, when we were hanging out, he did a solo record, and me and my sister helped him. You know, she did the cover art.
Yeah.
And then I sort of ran the label, and he kind of taught me how to do it. You know, what to do, how to get a record mastered, and then he had some distributors, and so he gave me the list, and that's how I learned how to do it from him. That was like 1977, I believe.
Wow.
That record was called Blue Boyer. It's an amazing record. It's a solo record.
Check it out. I don't know that.
And so, yeah, so we, that's how I learned. I mean, it's really simple.
Yeah. But how did you meet Julius, by the way? I mean, I know he's like really, you know, Doggone AD and all these records are amazing. Even, you know,
yeah.
To those still now, it's so fresh. But how did you hook up?
I was taking lessons with Anthony Braxton, and I was a huge fan of Julius's, but I didn't know that he lived in New York. And then Braxton got busy, and it was like fall '74. And he said, why don't you call Julius? And I was like, whoa, yeah. And so he gave me his number, and he was living in Brooklyn. And I called him, and he said, sure. And I think he told me he'd never had a student. So I'm pretty sure that was the case. And then I went out to Brooklyn, which was also fortuitous because I'd never been to Brooklyn. And as a result, I discovered Brooklyn, and I lived there pretty much my whole time in New York.
Yeah.
So that's how I met him. I just went to his house. You know, I called him, and then we became good friends. And we, you know, I studied with him for a long time, very informally. You know, we'd have these long.
How did this look like? You know, the lessons. I mean, the studying.
Long tones. He was way into,
wow.
You know, tone, and then everything else was kind of like we just go on these tangents and talk about. You know, I'd ask him, "How do I do this? What about this? Should I practice this?" And he'd go, "Yeah, you could do that." You know, and scales and technical things, but you know, you can learn that from a book. It would help me, but the main thing was tone. And then you know, I started composing because that's what he was doing all the time. So I thought that was part of it. Yeah. Like everybody composes. So I started composing, and he would help me with it. He wasn't at all condescending. You know, he's very supportive. He was like, took me seriously, even though I was a beginner.
Yeah.
And so I was very naive because I just thought, oh yeah, okay, I'm writing music. What's the big deal, you know?
Yeah.
And then he would encourage me to play with people, which took a while, but eventually around 78, 77, you know, I started finding people to play with. And, you know, but I kind of he was my model. You know, he wrote music, so I wrote music.
Yeah.
He had a band, so I got a band, you know.
Wow. Make
a record. Okay, I'll make a record, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously when I started making a living, then you kind of get nervous about all this stuff and insecure. And at the beginning, I was so naive, I didn't even know what to be insecure about, you know?
Yeah.
So I had this really misleading kind of self-confidence. I don't think it was real, but I didn't know anything. So it was like, okay, guess I'll do this, you know?
Yeah, but you seem to know already, like the first record, like it's there on point. You really had the concept going on, like what you wanted to do, at least to me when I listened to it. And how did you decide? When was the moment? You remember when you said like, okay, I will be the band leader now and I will call up these guys? How did that happen?
Well, right from the beginning, because I couldn't play with anybody. No one wanted to hire me. I mean, I didn't even think about that. So I knew that the only way I could play with people is to have a band and write music. So that's what I did. You know? So I had my first band. I wrote about 20 tunes. I had no idea what I was doing. It was guitar, bass, drums, and saxophone.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that guitar and bass, they sound an octave lower. So I wrote all this music that sounded really fucking low and bizarre.
Yeah.
And so, so I just started doing it, you know, and I got a few gigs, and I don't know, I think it just came intuitively. It just made sense, you know.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it gets way more complicated when you start making money from it. Then you start worrying about everything, and then, you know, you worry about, am I good? Am I pleasing? You know, is this, people like it? Blah, 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 you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of happened.
But you mentioned Braxton. How did the story with Braxton happen, actually? I mean, because he was early 70s, quite huge. I mean.
Well, I met him in Paris in 1972, because before I went to college, this friend of mine and I decided to go on a trip to Europe, just so we wouldn't have to think about life, you know. So we went over there, and I knew that I was a big fan of Braxton and all these other guys. And I knew all those Chicago guys and St. Louis guys were in Paris or had been. And so my ulterior motive was to go right to Paris and find all this shit, you know. And so we went over there, and then I said to my friend, hey, let's go to Paris, you know. And we knew somebody in Paris that we could stay with. So we went there, and then within days I met Braxton.
Oh.
And I ran into him, and I started talking to him. He was really friendly, and, you know, he wasn't that big. I mean, he looks like he was from now, but then, you know, we corresponded about, you know, I gave him his address, and I wrote him a letter. He wrote me a letter, you know, and I told him what I was doing. And then I wasn't playing back then, you know, so when I started playing, I found out he was coming to New York, and I asked him if he would give me lessons, and he said yes.
You didn't play the horn before that, or?
No, in 72, I wasn't a musician.
Wow.
I was just a big fan. So I started playing like 73, sort of. And then I got to New York, and then I decided to take lessons with him. He said yes. And then he was staying at Frederick Shefsky's apartment, composer. And so I went up there and took some lessons. And then he got very busy because he had just gotten that deal with Arista.
Yeah.
So he made the first record, I think it was called 5 Compositions or something. Or no, it's called Fall 1974. Mm. And that's when I was studying with him, and he got busy. And so then, you know, basically I got into the C scale, G scale, and the F scale. And then he sent me to Julius. And then it was all chaos from there, you know.
Well, that's a good start to start jazz with. Learning the F scale with Anthony Braxton.
I know. I mean, there was nothing remotely creative about it. It's like, okay, this is a scale, you know, play it and come back. Mary had a little lamb, you know.
Yeah, but still, you know, it's just the thought, you know, like learning, I don't know, the F scale with, you know, I don't know, Wes Montgomery or Sonny Sharrock or whoever, like, or, you know. But I wanted to ask you this also, like you mentioned before that the tapes keep coming now back, and you are publishing them on Bandcamp. And I found this incredible live one, which thanks to you, it's even for free. I mean, I would gladly even pay for it. But the one with Paul Motian, the quartet, like 80.
Oh yeah, with Herb, and yeah, I know that was. I mean, Herb.
Yeah, Herb is like one of the most underrated giants. That's.
Yeah,
I think for itself.
He was I think he was 32 or something.
Wow.
30, you know. And Paul sounds incredible, right?
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you. You know, I'm used to Paul with Frizzell and Lovano Trio, and like, you know, his.
Right.
But here he's actually playing like, you know, like.
Well, he always, you know, he's just. I mean, he used to play with Albert Eiler, you know.
Yeah,
Paul.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, he's. But that particular, there's a duet with him and Herb that's incredible.
Yeah.
And, you know, Paul's playing like, he sounds like Sonny Murray or something.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Yeah, that was amazing. I was really lucky. again, that was.
How did that band get together? How did you get?
Well, that's another weird story that I don't really know how it possibly happened, but I, I used to go see Paul play. I saw him with Jarrett a bunch of times at the Vanguard, like early 70s. And I went to see him do some gig. And I just went up to him and asked him if he would do a gig. And he said, "Send me a tape, man." And then I gave him a cassette. And then he said, "Call me in a week." And then I called him. And of course he hadn't listened to it. And he said, "Yeah, I'll do it, man." It was like $100 gig, some funky little place. And also we rehearsed a lot
with Paul.
And I know this because I've seen his address book, and it has the rehearsals. We did like 9 rehearsals.
Wow.
And Paul's notorious for not rehearsing.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
So anyway, we rehearsed up at his house, and the first gig was really fun. It was really good. And I would record all these gigs, and so I asked him, "Hey, do you mind if I make a record from this? I'll pay you, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Yeah, man, sounds good, So the first gig we did became a record. Then we did another gig, and same thing. That became a record. Yeah. Same guy recorded it. And then I decided to try to do a European tour. I must have been out of my mind. But I said, "Oh, okay, I'll try to do a tour." And Paul helped me. He gave me some contacts. And I was working at Barnes & Noble record store.
Yeah.
And I was calling promoters from the phone, trying to book this tour, like calling Italy and sitting there and whispering, and so I ended up getting a 3.5-week tour. It's probably the best tour I ever did.
This was your first tour, European? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd played one gig in Italy a couple of years earlier, but that was just a gig.
Wow.
But so anyway, I did this crazy tour. It was very traumatic, but it was successful. I mean, I thought I was going to quit music after that. It just seemed so hard to do this, like travel, play, collect the money.
83, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember collecting money in Sicily and in lira, $2,000 in lira. It was like you needed a knapsack to carry it.
6 million.
These guys paid me in the middle of the gig after the first set. I had to go upstairs. It was like right out of The Godfather. And this old man is counting out this money. I have no idea what it's worth. Gives me this huge thing of money. And then I have to stick it in my pocket. I have no place to put it. So I put this huge amount of lira. I look like I'm a horse carrying like some kind of luggage or something. And then I go out and play the next set. I'm freaked out of my mind. And there's like 500 people in this theater.
Wow.
And I've got this, I'm just like, what the fuck? It was like surreal. And so anyway, I got a million stories from that tour, but when I got home, I was seriously thinking about quitting because I was so freaked out by the whole thing, even though it was successful. And we made a record. We went in the studio, made another record. I didn't know how to make a record. So we went in the studio. We did everything in one
The Rituals,
take.
Right?
No, it was called the Mutant Variations.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we go in, we make the record in about an hour and a half. And after every tune, we did 4 tunes. And after every tune, I didn't know what to do. I just stop. And then Paul would go, "Yeah, man, what's the next?" And so then we do the next tune. And then the last tune, he goes, "Yeah, man, I think we're done." And he was right. But, I didn't know. Far be it for me to argue with him.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did this record and
wow.
And so, and so then when I got back, I kind of had this weird summer where I didn't know what to do with myself. And then I, decided, I think one of the things I decided was I'm going to play with people my age. Because, I don't know, it was just weird playing with Paul. I was so intimidated. It felt like, I need to do this with my peers and not be scared of the people in my band. And, Paul was super cool, but I was just scared, I was like, wow, Paul Motian,
Yeah.
So anyway, then I sort of went backwards and then worked on finding people to play with, writing me, the usual shit, had day jobs. and
Wow,
kept going.
Did you ever play with Paul then afterwards still, like through the years, or?
I played with him about a year before he died at the Vanguard.
Really?
I sat in with,
wow.
It was Ethan Iverson and Larry Grenadier.
Oh,
and me and Chris Speed sat in and did a set. That was really fun.
Beautiful.
But I think that was it. And then Paul, it was hilarious. I turned around and Paul goes, "Yeah, man, your tone's gotten better." And then I said, I hope so.
That's a good one.
That was it. But I mean, I was friends with him. I used to talk to him, and my wife was very good friends with him. So, I was in touch with him, and I saw him all the time. And
yeah.
As much as anyone.
Such a great composer and drummer.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, but I just wanted to ask you some other things like about regarding records, like bizarre moment when I look at your discographies, the Columbia records, because kind of not maybe bizarre, but like the music you do doesn't kind of fit in their repertoire, and I just wanted to ask you, how did that story happen actually with Columbia?
Gary Lucas, who's a guitar player, I grew up with him in Syracuse, where I grew up. And he used to come into Tower Records when I was working there. And he kept saying, he was working at Columbia in advertising. He was doing like advertising copy.
Okay.
And he kept coming in and saying, "Hey man, I'm going to get you, you want to get signed to Columbia?" And I would just sort of go, "Yeah, right. What are you on?" And, we'd have these conversations, and I just kind of laughed at him. And then one day, I'm making this long story short, and then one day he called me at Tower and he said, "I got a deal." And I'm like, "Huh?" And he goes, "It's happening." He's talking like a gangster. He's like, "Oh, it's happening, man." I said, "Okay," and then he said, and then eventually it was happening. And what happened was he had listened to this record that I did with Frizzell, a duo record.
Theoretically, right?
And he played them a section that sounded really pretty and convinced them that I was going to make a new age record.
Oh, shit.
Because that was a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
And everybody was into Wyndham Hills. So
Wyndham
Columbia
Hill,
was trying to, do that. And so we're on the plane. We do it in LA with Alex Cline and Hank Roberts and Frizzell. And we're on the plane, and he turns to me, Gary Lucas, and he says, "I hope it's not going to be too out ski." And I said, "What?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, they think it, I just played them like this little thing. They think you're making a new age record." And I just looked at him and said, "Well, it's too late now."
Oh, shit.
And, that didn't really, I forgot about that pretty much as soon as he said it. And then we did our thing. And then unfortunately for Columbia, we got a lot of attention. And so they had to do another one just to be safe face, But yeah, it was pretty crazy. That was cool. I mean, it was fun. I mean, there are a lot of stories. If I didn't have to go to the dentist, I'd tell you more. But
you mentioned Bill. I love hearing all these stories, how you hook up with guys, because they're always so interesting. Like, how did you? When did you guys meet with Bill Frizzell? There's like this really cool picture on Theoretically of Bill with those huge glasses and looking like. But how did you guys hook up? I mean,
well, I think we met through Paul.
Oh yeah.
I think I went to a couple of Paul's rehearsals. He let me come, and he was trying out people. And Bill, he's trying to start that band, and me and Bill talked about playing together. And then one day, we got together at my loft in Brooklyn. And when he got there, the phone rang, and it was the same engineer who recorded the Helias record offering free time.
Wow.
And Bill, as he was walking in the door, I said, "Hey, you want to go to this recording studio and make a record?" And he goes, "Okay," And then I grabbed a bunch of music that I had that I thought we could play. And then we went in and we started doing these overdubs and doing all this shit. And then the next day, Bill brought some music. And then we made this record in 2 days, I think. Wow. And that's kind of like the first time we played that, Theoretically. Wow. And then we did a couple of duo tours.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and then we did the Fulton Street Mall thing.
Yeah,
and then we didn't play much after that for a long time until very very recently.
Yeah.
We did a couple of gigs.
How was that like?
And it was great. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we started trading tunes over the internet recently, and he would write chords and play my tunes, and then I would look at them and play them, and we've become good friends because he lives in Brooklyn now. So
yeah,
you know, we hang out quite a bit, and so it's nice. It's been nice to kind of reunite.
Yeah,
after all the time.
Would be interesting to hear you guys play a duo now, like, you know, after all you've done, like your own stories, kind of to hear what.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be different.
Would be completely different, yeah. But speaking of guitar players, Tim, I just want to ask you about Ducré. You know, he's for me probably my favorite guitarist, if among Bill Frisell and some other guys, but like the most underrated guitarist, definitely.
Yeah, and composer.
And composer,
probably the most underrated composer too.
Yeah, and the sound, and I mean everything. And I wanted
musicians know about him, you know, but
yeah,
you know, if you count journalists, if they count as humans, then
yeah,
I guess
that's
underrated.
You know, he's like the musician in a way. Like every musician knows of.
I agree. I don't know how it's possible that people don't talk about him. Him and Torn, really. Yeah. They're both underrated.
Yeah.
You know, I find these guys, I'm attracted to losers, I guess.
But how did you how did you hook up with Ducré? When did this story happen?
I met him in 1988 in Frankfurt. It was the Baden-Baden jazz meeting. It was in Baden-Baden.
Yeah.
And they invite people from all these different countries. And me and Herb went there. And Mark was invited, and he was there. And we all wrote music for each other. And Herb and I wrote these big band pieces. And then, you know, played it with Mark. And I was super impressed. I mean, first of all, he memorized all the music while we were there. And then he would just walk around practicing all the time. And he seemed kind of shy, but I really liked him. And then after we did this thing, I called him to do a tour to start a band, that Total Chaos band.
Yeah.
And I think he told me that he thought I was bullshitting. So when I told him there was a tour, he just kind of went along with it. But I think he didn't think I was serious. He was like, why are you bringing somebody from Europe when you have all these guitar players? Yeah. You know, I flew him to New York to rehearse.
Wow.
And then do a gig. And the hilarious thing is, when he got there, of course, he lost his passport. He lost his plane ticket within about a day. And we had to go to it was insane. In the pouring rain, we had to go to the embassy, try to get a temporary passport, and then get another plane ticket. I mean, it was a nightmare. But Mark was really loose. He would just leave his beautiful leather jacket hanging on the wall with all his stuff in it. I said, why? You know, I was like, why didn't you leave your stuff in my house? He goes, I thought it would be safer if I carried it, you know. So his coat was stolen and all this shit. It was hilarious. But anyway, it was the first rehearsal, you know, it was Mark Dresser, Herb, Trevitt, and was it quintet, right? Oh, and Steve Swell. And we're rehearsing, and we finished, you know, we take a break after an hour and a half. Mark's nailing everything. And then Dresser's freaking out. He's like looking at me like, and he's looking at Mark's music stand. And Mark had his folder on the stand, but it was unopened. So the thing that I mailed him was in his folder sitting on, he never opened the music.
Wow.
So he was playing all this music from memory, tons of music. And Dresser just freaked him out. Because Dresser, I think, was a little skeptical. He was like, why are you bringing, you know, all these good guitar players? You know, he was kind of like, oh, this guy, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Ducré shows up and just destroys the music. No music. And you can barely see his glasses. If you try to look through his glasses, it's like looking into a fog. You know, so, I mean, I think he was wearing sunglasses, like prescription sunglasses. So no one could see his eyes. No one realized he wasn't reading any music.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, that was like, you know, it was all downhill from there, you know, and trying to get him in every band, every possible situation.
So that's how Big Satan was then formed also, like.
Yeah, Big Satan and Blood County played
Yeah.
with, and the Julius Hemphill project back in the early 90s. Pretty much everything. Any way I can figure out a way to hire him, I do. And
when was Big Satan formed? Like, I mean, Big Satan is for me like my favorite.
I don't know, probably 96, maybe 96.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, probably.
It's such a burning trio. I mean.
Yeah, that was fun. That was really fun. It's fun playing Mark's music.
Yeah, I mean, like he wrote some stuff as well. Yeah, but speaking of Big Satan, like I wanted to ask you some other collaborator you work a lot with, which is Tom, who is Tom Rainey.
Yeah, he's
again for me one of those guys who, like Ducre, like who everyone should know about him. But you speak about drummers, and people here in Virginia, I speak about drummers, and they're like, well, they know Marcus Gilmore or whoever, like who are drummers, but they should know Rainey and they should know Mike Serene and all these guys. But how did you hook up with Tom, or what's the story with Tom?
1981, I met him. He was a neighbor, and and these guys would have these sessions, and I met him. We used to hang out quite a bit, and then we started playing together. I did a session over at this crazy house in Brooklyn, and then we were playing together quite a bit, starting in 1981, I think.
But like open stuff, because he was like playing a lot of standards back then still, right? Or
he was playing Fred Hirsch and Kenny Werner, and it didn't matter to me. I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of thought, oh, he's a drummer. And we were playing free at his house, so there were all these guys, I just figured give it a try. I think he was as mystified as you are. I don't think he could understand why I hired him either for a while. And then eventually, I think the big breakthrough was I stopped using bass players with Tom because I felt like we used to play duo all the time at my house. And I felt like he played differently when there was no bass player. He had more freedom sonically. And so I just decided to start Big Satan. And all of a sudden he could play, he didn't have to worry about his sound getting in the way. And he had a lot more freedom. And the interaction was different, without a bass player. And that's pretty much why I did it, And then when we started doing, hard sell and science friction, the stuff that he's doing with Craig is unbelievable.
That's incredible.
I've been digging up these old tapes. I found our second gig. These guys were doing shit that I had no idea what was going on, but I agree with you. I don't understand how you could listen to that and then not realize what a genius Tom was, But, the thing is, getting recognized and playing music are two very different things. And the goal is not to get recognized.
No, sure.
And that's why Tom and Mark and Torn, these guys are so great. They don't think, they're not doing it for the attention. They're doing it because they're, interested in music, They love playing music. So, it's okay not to be noticed, I think.
Yeah.
As long as you can, as long as you can get work.
No, but they are, but there should be more. You know what I mean? It's like
I know. It's just. But you drive yourself crazy if you think about that stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Because there's a lot more involved than playing, And,
but I wanted to ask you, like, since we were talking about these groups in the '90s, like, I think the '90s you did a lot of this free improv stuff with Blood Count and with Paraphrase. And when did this moment happen? At least how I hear your music now, like the '90s was a special period, seemed to be for you, like especially because of the improv stuff. How did that happen? Well,
the first improv thing was with Paraphrase, and I did it because I didn't think I could do it. So I thought, well, I'm going to do it and see if I can do it, because I didn't think I had the ability to carry off an improv thing. And then with bass and drums, triple, hard. And we used to play sessions quite a bit with Drew, and it was really fun. We never played anybody's music. So I thought, well, why ruin it and play tunes? Let's just do what we do. And if we do a tour, eventually we'll figure out how to do it, And so we did a tour, and it was most of the time it was cool, and but it wasn't any different than, you know, the bands that played written music. You know, you have some good gigs, you have some bad gigs. So it was really fun. And in some ways, what was interesting is because usually when you think of free improv, you think of, you know, extreme texture and, you know, extended techniques and all that shit. But we were just playing. Yeah. You know, we weren't playing much differently than in any other situation. So it was cool. I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, but it sounds like you said, yeah, it's not as the free improv stuff. Sometimes you listen to that and it's really boring, to be honest. It's just... Well,
yeah, we had some boring gigs. I mean, you could be boring and, you know, but I know what you mean. I mean, it's not so much it's just the way, you know, sometimes people think that playing free means doing the most extreme thing you can do. And that's creative, but it's not always the case. You know, it takes a lot of creativity to be interesting melodically. Yeah. You know, and my influence was Julius, who was a very melodic player, you know. That was basically his thing. So I just realized, looking at this Zoom, I'm starting to look like Michael Douglas, the actor. My hair. I have this goatee because my shaver stopped working today. So I was trying to shave and the battery died, so I got stuck with a goatee.
It looks cool.
I think I look like Michael Douglas. Fatal Attraction.
That's not a bad thing.
Anyway.
But no, I just you mentioned Craig, and do you feel like what happened for you compositionally and band-wise, playing-wise, when you met Craig and then later met Mitchell, because those two are again geniuses on their own, like, you know, introducing keyboards. I mean, what did this bring?
Yeah, I mean, I was always afraid of the piano. I think one of the early things I did was with Django Bates, and that worked out pretty well. And then I got up the nerve to do it with Craig, and I wanted to do it electric first, because I wanted something that kind of alluded to bass and guitar without having those instruments, and also something that was texturally electric. And so I just started writing. Everything I wrote was pretty much two parts for Craig. You know, like it was a piano part, basically. Yeah. And it ended up working because of his brilliance, rhythmic brilliance, and what he did with it. I mean, it was, again, there's somebody, I don't know if he's underrated, but that period, it's unreal what he was doing.
That junk magic also that he did. And all
I mean, it was unreal. Yeah. And that, you know, helped me hear what I was hearing. Because you hear somebody do it, and then you go, oh, great, I can do this, then I can do that. And the same thing happened with Matt. You know, I found another freak. And because of what he could do, it enabled me to write more ambitious things for the piano. You know,
how did you meet Matt, by the way? I mean, because he's like one of those rare jewels in the...
I think he was stalking me. No. I kept hearing about him from Ralph Alessi because he was a student of Ralph's.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
And at one point he wrote me a letter, Matt, and asked for some scores when he was in college. And I remember it because he asked for the two longest things I'd ever written. And there were about millions of pages of music, and I didn't have any scores, so I was freaked out. I called him up and said, man, I don't have any scores. Can I send you parts? And then I I spent the whole day looking for these parts. And then I sent him this huge package. And then I think he called me back and asked me how much it cost. And I think I said like $10 or 20. I don't know. I didn't even know what to say. Yeah. But I remember his letter. I still have it. Oh. You know, dear Mr. Berne, you know, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then when I heard his name from Ralph, I thought, oh, I think that's that guy. And then eventually I met him. We were teaching together, and we were going to do a faculty concert. So I asked him if he wanted to come over and look at some music, and then he did. And then I think that day I asked him if he wanted to be in a band, you know, start a band. Yeah. Because first of all, he could read unbelievably well, and also just great improviser. And, you know, and that kind of inspired me to start a new band at a time when I really wasn't doing much.
Like the snake oil thing, or?
Yeah, it was sort of post science fiction, and I didn't really know what to do. And so for a couple of years, I was doing a lot of improv gigs because I didn't have a band really. And so then I met Matt, and then I started a band as quickly as possible.
And you guys then kind of went to ECM also with that. That was like your debut with ECM also, right? With that group.
Yeah. That first record. Yeah. I just called him up and he said, "Great, come on over." No, that's a joke.
How did the story with ECM happen? I have to ask.
I had met Manfred a bunch of times, and at one point I emailed him and asked him if he wanted to produce a record for me.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of a psychological trick, but he said, "Oh, why don't you do it for ECM?" And I said, "Oh, okay." So I got to give myself, I think I should get the Genius Award just for that email. But anyway, so we hooked up, and he did that Snake Oil record, which was fun. You know, I kind of, working with him was cool. I mean, we're both stubborn. We both know what we want. Yeah. And I think that was, you know, what do they say? Attracts up. Oh no, opposites attract. Oh well. Yeah. But anyway, we got along, and I think the record did well, so everybody was happy, you know. Yeah. And we did the other ones. That was great. I mean, that was an amazing opportunity, you know.
But did you how is for your music, you know, like, I think those records kind of started to change the whole vibe of ECM the way I see it, because then, you know, LAC came and Formanek, and ECM changed direction in a way also. Before it was associated, you know, with Mettini and all these cats, but you kind of seem to have moved it a little, right?
I had something to do with it, but there's someone else who really had something to do with it, and she hasn't been recognized for that, but I think everybody knows who that is, and I'm not going to say her name. But there is a person who definitely was responsible for all the New York activity that started to happen, and you know, and Mapper was into it, but there's definitely a reason it happened, and it was quite successful.
Definitely.
And it was a great period for him and for us. Yeah. And we will move on from that.
Tim, I will not, since, you know, because of the toothache and everything, I'll not take too much of your time. Just one last question, but you know, I have so many questions that I'd like to ask you, but now I feel bad to bother you, but just. No,
it's cool. I can go. I'll tell you when I have to stop.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you about this. We mentioned ECM, and Mike Formanek did then a couple of records for ECM as well. And you did like a new one with Mike and Mary Halverson, even better.
Yeah.
And I talked with Mike about it, and I really love it because it's completely different than what you did or he did compositionally and playing wise. And I wanted to ask you, like, how did that trio happen actually? And playing with, when did you also meet Mike Formanek? When did your story happen?
Well, I started playing in his bands in the early 90s.
90s, yeah.
Yeah, and Joey Berne kind of introduced us. And so Mike made some incredible Enja records in the early 90s. Do you know those records?
Yeah, I have Wide Open Space. It's like one of my favorite records, man.
Yeah, and the one with Wayne Krantz. A couple of them that I was on. And so that was great. And then he joined Blood Count, and then we just kept playing together in different situations, and we've always been really close friends. And my wife was, I'd say, responsible for getting him on ECM. I gave her the record, and she said, "Oh, let me send it to Manfred," and then he accepted it, and then that's how it started.
Yeah.
And and I've been playing with Mary, with Jess Smith, and so it all kind of came around, and you know, and we still talk. We were going to do a duo record a couple of weeks ago, but we ran out of time, so we'll probably do that next month.
Wow. Okay. So you had a record now with Elias. Now Formanek. I think next one is Drew Grass.
Well, me and Mike made a duo record in the 90s.
Which one was that?
I forgot what it's called.
Oh, Nature of the Beast. No, that's his solo. No, that's the solo.
No, it's called what the fuck is it called?
Yeah, I have it.
Stubborn. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But look it up. I know.
Ordinary People. No.
Yes. Ordinary People.
Ordinary People. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we did that.
That's a cool one.
And, yeah, Mike's the best. I love Mike.
Yeah, it's so cool. But like, is it different for you to like being a band leader or being like a co-leader? Like, do you prefer being like I mean, you don't do sideman gigs, or you still do in a way, I guess. But
I do them when people ask. But I think I'm a shitty sideman now. I think I'm off that list. But I like it. You know, it's like a vacation. All you have to do is learn the music.
Yeah.
You don't have to book gigs. You know, but I enjoy it quite a bit.
But you like being a band leader as well? Like, you know, is this?
Yeah, I think I'm addicted to it. You know, it's sort of an unfortunate addiction that I have.
Yeah.
And I like it. You know, I like coming up with stuff and trying to, you know, think of ideas and I don't know, you know, playing with different people. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, Tim, one last question to end. Like, I wanted to ask you just that about your composition. You mentioned that you know, you write a lot of stuff and you have written. Do you have like a routine that you write? Like, let's say, I don't know, you have a new Snake Oil record coming up or whatever, and you know you're writing for that group, or you just start writing music and then you...
Usually I know what I'm writing for. Now I don't. Now I'm just writing shit and playing it with people, and you know, it's kind of cool. But yeah, usually I know, and I just sit down. I usually try to start with an idea before I start writing. You know, like I'm gonna write something slow. I'm gonna write something dissonant.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write something pretty. You know, whatever it is. I have an idea, and then I just do it without doing anything else, you know, sit there like it's a job until I get something, you know, and then I don't really practice when I'm writing, you know, at the end of the day, I might play what I wrote, but I won't practice, you know, and I won't interrupt the flow.
Yeah.
You know, I think once you start writing, you have to just do it for me. So yeah, I probably used to do it more, but if I have to write something, then I just go into this severe kind of concentration mode, focus, where I just scare myself into doing it, you know?
Yeah, but
in a way.
What about the long tunes? Like, you know, you have like, I don't know, 20-minute songs like the Incidentals, like the Sideshow. That one is like 26 minutes. I listened to it yesterday.
Actually, that used to be an hour. I had to split it into 2 tunes.
Really? Well,
Sideshow,
how does this happen?
I don't know, man. I just go. I don't like stopping and talking to the audience. So I just keep going, you know. And I like the momentum that the band gets when we play these long tunes.
Yeah.
You know, I think stopping sometimes can be a distraction. You know, you come back to earth, you have to deal with the audience, and, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like when I listen to those records, I can't, it's like somebody else did it, you know. Like I can't imagine doing it now, but I don't know, you know, maybe I'll do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.